Good afternoon, and thank you for that gracious welcome. It's a great privilege to represent the Avid staff developers today and to present an overview of your week as I share my Avid experience. I want to thank our Avid leaders for this opportunity, particularly Dr. Michelle Marcus of Avid Center, Dr. Ann Hart of the Eastern Division, and Janan Sumler of the Avid Northeastern Division. If this is your first Summer Institute, please stand for a moment. We'd like to welcome you and introduce you to your extended family. Thank you. I say that because, like family, Avid has a vast support system that you will experience this week and in years to come. Those that are not standing are back for a reason. They know Avid works for our students and for our schools. I'd like us to begin by considering our Summer Institute theme this year, Today's Learners, Tomorrow's Leaders. That is a very fitting title for epitomizing who we are as educators. But when it is juxtaposed to what many educators are facing today, there is a frustration that can overwhelm us. To put this in perspective, we can borrow the phrase, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. The worst of times refers to the many newspaper headlines we have been reading from around the country for the past year, like teacher layoff notices shocking, or educational budget cuts reach staggering heights, and cuts in benefits at an all-time high. According to the New York Times, what is rarely mentioned in these headlines is that educators' salaries have declined over the past 3 decades, and we have been making sacrifices all along, including salary freezes and benefit adjustments. To add to this devastating reality, Education Nation's latest data shows that 7,000 students a day dropped out of school last year. That's 1 student every 12.3 seconds. In all of this lays much frustration. But this week, you will experience the best of times. The Avid College Readiness system has been growing and improving for more than 30 years. We don't have to wait for Superman. This system already helps to give students the opportunities to grow as learners and achieve a successful future. The Avid Brain Trust researches the best instructional practices and marries them to a rigorous curriculum with an embedded support system that can increase learning for every student and keep them in school, because Avid levels the playing field. Journalist Fareed Zakaria, in his new book, writes, "We don't have an education problem in the United States. We have an inequality problem. America's problem is not one of excellence, but one of access. The Avid system works to increase access and opportunities for all students." All educators say that all students can learn. The difference this week is that you will be surrounded by people who actually believe it and will give you the tools to make it happen. This week will be the best of times for you because you will be given the rare opportunity to get the best training there is to improve what you do and successfully move forward to close the achievement gap. Each of you will be heading to your strands tomorrow to work with an Avid staff developer. You'll find we are a diverse group of educators working at Avid schools all over the country. Our goal is to help you develop the best Avid system for your district. Avid methodologies will be explored and applied to your specific role. We are and will remain part of your ongoing support as you move forward with this endeavor. You will not only have the incredible Avid website filled with information, online learning, and file sharing, but you can have our phone numbers on speed dial. Staff developers have your back, as does everyone at Avid Center. I had the privilege during my first district director training session to attend a breakfast with our founder, Mary Catherine Swanson. She sat next to me. We began chatting about the many struggles schools were facing at the time, and she said one of her frustrations was that schools too often put so many barriers in front of students to keep them out of the most rigorous courses. We both agreed that taking a prerequisite course for the advanced placement class is important. But there are schools that only take students with A averages in their classes, get high scores on course placement assessments, and score high on state tests. Mary Catherine said, well, if you're only taking straight-A students who have scored well on everything, you've just created a class that doesn't need a teacher. Mary Catherine knew then what we know now, that there's only one true indicator of college success, and it isn't high GPA or SAT scores. It's taking and surviving AP courses. This week, you will discover that Avid is the catalyst to bring rigor school-wide and create a college-going culture. You will also have an opportunity to reflect upon the hidden curriculum, which is direct instruction of note-taking, inquiry, organizational and test-taking skills, as well as Socratic and collaborative protocols. Not knowing the hidden curriculum is what keeps students from being who they are supposed to be. Each day you will have a chance to work in your site teams, to share what you are learning in the strands, and to create an action plan to help you move forward by examining the 11 essentials. Let me remind you, this is not a convention, this is an institute. We give homework. Avid is about active engagement. We apply all best practices. Homework gives us a chance to be reflective, practice what we have learned, and prepare us for the next day. At Avid, we have a common belief that professional development without follow-up is malpractice. I have been where you are now. My journey with the Avid system started in 2003. At the time, I was the professional development specialist for Millville Public Schools in New Jersey. Of our more than 6,000 students, just under a third are classified with a learning disability, and more than half are living in generational poverty. It is a very diverse community where over 23 languages are spoken in the homes. Millville is located in the poorest county in our state, where we have the highest percentage rates of teenage pregnancy, poverty, parents in prison, and the lowest level of education in the home. Facing these challenges, we needed to alter what we were doing. In the fall of 2002, two of our instructional coaches at the time, Ellen Nickerson and Patty Atkinson, wrote and received a comprehensive school reform grant to implement Avid in our district. We had first heard about Avid from Dr. Pedro Noguero of NYU at a conference. It definitely sounded like something we needed. Over a 3-year period, that grant brought in more than $700,000, giving us the opportunity to begin and expand the program in both our middle school and high school. We were awarded the grant on June 15th and were required to begin immediately allocating the funds. The problem was that school was closing on June 20th. So we had to scramble to get things in place to attend our first Avid Summer Institute. But at the time, we knew very little about the system and what the requirements were. We had the staff ready to go, but we had not yet spoken to students and parents because we didn't know how. We didn't learn the selection and recruitment processes until we came to the Summer Institute. Needless to say, we had a busy and chaotic August putting the first 2 classes together. We made a few mistakes along the way, but we got better. That first summer, we brought a team from both buildings totaling 15 people, and they began implementing the methodologies with great success. The following year, 35 people came to Institute, and in the 3rd year, 67 people came. These were all volunteers. They saw the success their colleagues were having, and they wanted in. My professional career was re-energized when I was selected as the district director, and it began with that first encounter with Mary Catherine. Through my Avid leadership training, I soon learned that Avid could teach the world a new way to dream. That first year, we started with only 40 students and less than 10% of staff trained in the Avid methodologies. Within 5 years, we had over 300 students and 80% of staff trained in grades 5 through 12. When the grant money ran out at the end of the 3rd year, we funded Avid on a shoestring using Title I funding wherever we could. At the beginning of the 5th year, we applied to become a national demonstration site at our middle school. Just going through that process improved our program. By the end of that year, we became the first national demonstration site in the Northeast. Today, going into its 9th year in Millville, Avid continues to grow strong with nearly 100% of staff trained in the methodologies and Avid students enrolled in every advanced class and AP course we offer. The Avid system helped us to build a strong college-going culture throughout the district as Avid methodologies became Avidized in each building. We saw a rise in state test scores and classroom grades, an increase of AP courses offered and taken, as well as more students going off to college. Avid in Millville has withstood changes of superintendents, principals, directors, teachers, and coordinators. When you build a strong program with capacity, steeped in the 11 essentials, you will thrive. Some of you may remember seeing that well-known Avid cartoon that shows 2 young boys walking home from school. One is wearing a light blue t-shirt, and the other boy is wearing a shirt that says Avid across the front. The boy in the blue t-shirt looks at the boy with the Avid t-shirt and says, "We used to have an Avid class in our school, but then she moved." This week, you will work to build your program strong with a solid foundation so that you won't ever have to hear your students saying that. As Avid grew in Millville, I was inspired to go back to school. At the time, I had just turned 50, and I thought it would be a great way to celebrate the new decade. Of course, I didn't want to do it alone, so I dragged my friend, Ellen Nickerson, to join me. The first 2 classes went very well. We both got A's and were feeling pretty confident until that 3rd class, Advanced Educational Research and Statistics. It was then that I realized that statistics and menopause were not a good fit. Ellen and I hadn't had a math class in almost 30 years, or as she says, 30-ish. So we were both a bit hesitant. When I picked up my 2 thick textbooks, I excitedly started to review them. About halfway through the first paragraph, I stopped because I realized that what I was reading were just words, no meaning, no connection. I read it again, and this time, I circled all the words I didn't understand. There were 167 words in that first paragraph, and I circled 43. I was in trouble. As a young child, I struggled with learning to read, and suddenly all the frustrations, lack of confidence, and feeling plain stupid came flooding back. So naturally, I called Ellen, hysterically crying, and said, "We need to Avidize this or it's going to kill me." She agreed. We began seeking out tutor support and ran tutorials like a well-honed Avid elective. We took Cornell notes, wrote detailed summaries and reflections, and we used every critical reading strategy we knew. By the end of the semester, we had a lot more gray hair, but we both had an A in advanced statistics. We found that Avid methodologies work for the young and old. Over the years in Millville, we've graduated dozens of Avid seniors, sending them off to colleges around the country. In fact, this fall will be our first class of Avid students that are all going to be seniors in college. 100% of our high school seniors get accepted to 4-year colleges, and 98% go off to college, while 2% go off to the military. Our Avid students mirror the demographics of our community, and most are students who are truly in the academic middle and reflect the Avid student profile. However, a portion of our Avid students are students that are in danger of falling through the cracks. These students often see no hope in the system, and tragically, the system sees no hope in them. I'd like to briefly share 3 stories of students who could have easily been failed by the system. As I tell you about these amazing Avid students who are now seniors in college, you may be reminded of students whose stories are similar, the students that could have been left behind. I'd like to begin with Chris. He was orphaned in middle school. Both of his parents died 2 weeks apart. Soon after this tragedy, one teacher saw a spark and convinced Chris to apply to the Avid program. In his first year, he saw a rise in grades and began to plan for a future, one including college. Throughout middle school and high school, Chris was shuffled between family members. He endured a brother going off to prison and a teenage sister having a baby. He threw himself into sports, but in his junior year, he contracted the MRSA virus and could no longer participate. That ended his dreams of a sports scholarship. But he knew he had other skills, thanks to Avid. Chris did receive a college scholarship and continues to thrive at Lock Haven University in Pennsylvania, where he is back on the track team and majoring in criminal justice. If he were here, he would tell you that Avid gave him the skills he needed to be successful and the promise of a future he is now living. Next, we have Elijah, who is majoring in social work at Stockton College in New Jersey. He also started Avid in our middle school. He hails from a very large family where he was raised by his mom and stepdad. Like all big families struggling to survive, they face their share of many hardships. In high school, he began to help his family in ways no one saw coming. To encourage his mom to do more with her life, Elijah taught her everything we were teaching in the Avid elective. During his high school career, she went to college and became a nurse. He never stopped spreading Avid methodologies. On his college campus, he started study groups and taught the tutorial process to his classmates, all of whom are doing very well. If he were here today, he would tell you that Avid not only gave him the academic tools he needed, but also gave him the confidence in high school to become a leader of numerous clubs and organizations that gave back to the community and laid the foundation for his chosen profession. And lastly, we have Marietta, who was homeless most of her life from about grade 2 through grade 11. Marietta was recommended by a freshman guidance counselor who felt she had academic potential. Unfortunately, she also had many discipline referrals, very low grades, and more than 50 days absent in grade 8. She was the antithesis of the Avid student profile, with the exceptions of determination and first-generation college. She began Avid in grade 9. That year, her GPA went from a 1.4 in grade 8 to a 2.9, and she had no discipline referrals. However, she missed 22 days of school. While we were still concerned about her attendance, being homeless wasn't her fault. We made a plan of what to do when the school bus couldn't find her, and she stuck with it, missing only a few days for the rest of her high school years. By the time she graduated high school, she had a solid 3.7 GPA and was taking several advanced and AP courses. I'm proud to tell you that today, Marietta is a rising senior at Monmouth University in New Jersey with a 3.4 GPA in business and is in the process of applying to graduate school. This year, through her entrepreneur course, she and several of her classmates raised funds to open a much-needed soup kitchen in their college town. The students prepare and cook their own food and serve dozens of people each week. They even put a busing service in place to support those without transportation. Marietta and her executive board felt they could do more. So now they've implemented health services and job opportunities for all those seeking assistance. If she were here today, she would simply say thank you for empowering her to have a future. While the accomplishments of these 3 students may sound unique, they're not, because Avid students never stop internalizing the ideals of Avid. Long after they leave us, they thrive in colleges and communities around our nation, using their individual determination to change and improve the lives of those around them. Avid students embody the best of what we have to offer. Now that I've shared our stories about Chris, Elijah, and Marietta, please turn to someone sitting near you and share the name of a student you feel can benefit from Avid. Go ahead. I can only imagine, so many to mention. So let's remember why we are here this week and keep these students in the forefront of all that we do. Our hopes for you this week are deep and wide. We hope that you will embrace the opportunity to collaborate with us so we can learn from each other. We hope you will gain a deeper understanding of the Avid certification process and why it's so important to implement Avid with integrity. This week will be our best of times because Avid Summer Institute is like catching lightning in a bottle. You'll know you are experiencing something wonderful as you are experiencing it. Let's work together to eradicate those negative headlines and join collectively for today's learners so we can create tomorrow's leaders. Thank you, and have a great week here in Atlanta.